When you think of a samurai, one word probably jumps to mind right away: loyalty. This unbreakable death before dishonor code that's kind of defined them in our imagination for, well, forever. But what if I told you that the real story of that loyalty is way more complex and honestly a lot more contradictory than the legend we all know? Let's dig in and find out what was really going on.
So, the big question we're tackling here is pretty simple. How did the whole idea of samurai loyalty actually change throughout Japanese history? Was it always this single, rock-solid ideal, or did it, shift, bend, and maybe even do a complete 180 over the centuries?
Okay, this right here. This is the image of loyalty we're all familiar with. This line comes from a military code for Japanese soldiers in 1941, and it really cemented that modern ideal of absolute devotion. It's the whole choose death over surrender thing, something we totally connect with the samurai spirit, with Bushido. But here's the kicker. That idea is way, way more modern than you probably think.
To really get to the bottom of this, we've got to rewind way back. We're talking about the Sengoku period, the Warring States era. And let me tell you, what we find there is not a world of die-hard loyalty, oh no. It's a world of constant, calculated betrayal.
So this slide right here, this is the core of it. The myth we all know is about dying for your lord. But the reality, the actual common practice when samurai were fighting all the time, was to kill a lord who was losing his grip on power. And get this, it wasn't seen as shameful. It was just what you did, standard operating procedure.
In fact, there's even a specific term for it, Teijo Tiki Kodo, which basically means routine action. It was so normal that a samurai who, say, killed his boss and joined a more powerful one wouldn't even lose his job or get a bad reputation for it. Loyalty wasn't some moral absolute. It was all about making the smart, pragmatic choice.
I mean, this saying from back then just sums it all up, doesn't it? Alliances were like the weather, always changing. Your loyalty pointed wherever the power and the rewards were. But then, one man showed up and flipped the entire script. And that man was Oda Nobunaga, one of the great unifiers of Japan. This guy didn't just win battles with brute force. He engineered a complete revolution in the very idea of Bushido itself. So, before Nobunaga, you gotta understand, loyalty was basically a business deal. It was a simple contract. You fight for me, and I give you land and money. If the lord couldn't pay up or protect his territory, well, the contract was void. A samurai was free to go find a better offer. Unconditional loyalty just wasn't a thing.
But Nobunaga, he just smashed that whole system to pieces. First, he created a professional army, pulling warriors away from their farms. Second, he started paying them a salary, directly. This made them totally dependent on him, not on a chunk of land they could call their own. And third, with that new power dynamic, he demanded something totally radical. Absolute, personal, emotional loyalty, pointed directly and only at him.
And the crazy part, it actually worked. You have to see, this wasn't just some military shuffle, it was a psychological rewiring, a total revolution of the samurai code. Nobunaga was creating a new breed of warrior, one tied to him not by land, but by this fierce personal devotion.
And listen to this. This is from Nobunaga himself. He demanded reverence, a kind of respect that was almost godlike. Loyalty wasn't a contract anymore. It was this intense personal bond to him, the man. This was the seed of the Bushido we think of today, but it was going to take an era of peace for it to really blossom.
So, after all the wars finally died down, the Tokugawa shogunate started the Edo period, and with it came over 250 years of peace. This brand new stability was about to change the meaning of loyalty all over again.
Think about it. With no wars to fight, what's a samurai supposed to do? They were on the verge of becoming irrelevant. They were basically bureaucrats now, not warriors. So to keep their special status, their whole code needed an upgrade, from a practical battlefield guide to a real moral philosophy.
And the secret ingredient for this big change was something called Neo-Confucianism. The founder of the shogunate, Tokugawa Ieyasu, was a big fan and brought these ideas in. They provided this really strict ethical system that focused on stuff like duty, order, and absolute loyalty to your superiors, not just as a personal feeling for your boss, but as a universal objective moral law.
This right here really puts it all into perspective. The loyalty that Nobunaga created was groundbreaking, for sure, but it was still based on this subjective, emotional feeling for one guy. The Edo period took that and turned it into an objective, ethical system, a code of conduct based on principles that apply to everyone.
It made the samurai the moral backbone of society.
Okay, so let's tie this all together. How do we get from a world of backstabbing to that image of the perfect, loyal samurai we started with? Let's follow the thread of this idea of loyalty.
This timeline basically sums up our whole journey. Loyalty started out as transactional, a business deal. Nobunaga made it personal. The Edo period then made it ethical, a moral code, and finally, in the modern era, it became ideological, shifting from loyalty to a lord to loyalty to the nation and the emperor.
Remember where we started? Back in the chaotic Sengoku period. A captured warrior would say something just like this. Loyalty was transferable. It was a professional skill, not a suicide pact. It pointed to whoever was holding the winning hand.
And now we come full circle, back to this quote. 400 years later, the ideal is the polar opposite. It just perfectly shows how dramatically the whole definition of loyalty was twisted and changed, from a practical way to survive and get ahead to an absolute ideology that demanded everything.
So that leaves us with one last big question. The romantic, unbending Bushido we see in movies and pop culture, is it really the code of the samurai who lived and died by the sword, or is it a philosophy that was actually created in a time of peace and then later repurposed for the needs of a modern nation? The history is clear. Loyalty, just like the samurai themselves, was never just one thing.